Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm a social studies educator, historian, and host of this, the Everything is a Primary Source podcast. I'm also an avid collector of popular culture artifacts. I love what I find at thrift store outlets, garage sale leftovers, and what I spot just making my way around the built world. I enjoy sorting through boxes of free books and magazines, not to mention online collections like Internet Archive, and of course the Library of Congress. But you don't need to spend your time digging through bins or following online rabbit holes to get a look into the past. The movies and TV we watch, the books we read, and the games we play are all documents of the past. So is fashion, food, music, toys, even the roads we travel on and the places we live and work in. Everything is a primary source. This podcast is the result of exhibiting these kinds of artifacts in public, getting passersby to select an item they connect with, and then chatting with me to see what it says about the time, place, and people who made it. The conversation you are about to hear, therefore, is your history, my history, our history, through popular culture. So Greg and I have been kind of like across a chasm for the last, the aisle of exhibitors for the last couple hours today. And how's NCSS going for Grand Classroom?
It's been great. Constant flow of people, very busy. And, people come by the booth and they see all of our travel-related items, and everyone wants to say, where they've been, or what national park they visited, or what inspired them, and that's always fun. Just that conversation, it connects people.
That's a good opportunity to ask. Tell us a little bit about Grand Classroom. What is it that you do?
So we're a student travel company. We got our start doing national park travel, and we have been around for about 25 years now. We started taking students to the Grand Canyon back in 2000, 2001, and expanded out to other national parks, and then got into the world of doing Washington, D.C. trips and civics related and historic cities, and then international as well. So we build trips for schools and help teachers take students outside the classroom.
When it comes to social studies education and its status today, do you feel that, or do you find that services like what you provide are increasing in popularity?
I certainly do. I see, especially with the shift to civics curriculum in the 8th grade level, specifically here in Massachusetts, where actually I was a teacher for a long time, seeing it in action as opposed to just hearing it from the teachers or researching it. It's almost a culmination for many schools of the coursework they've been doing all year to project out of the classroom and to see it in action.
And I imagine that the more popular and these things become and the more possible they are, the financial component isn't as prohibitive, that it becomes more affordable for schools to take trips. Because now it almost seems like standard, 8th grade in particular, that's the 8th grade trip.
Yep.
And depending on where you are in the country, it could be DC, it could be...
Absolutely.
What would you say would be the furthest you've ever transported students?
We have groups going all over the world. We did trips to rural India. We bring groups to the Galapagos. We have groups down in Patagonia, just all over the world. And,
I guess hence Grand Classroom.
That's right.
And
that's right.
And it's taking the idea that the classroom. Because I was talking to people earlier today, about virtual reality and the internet and how we're able to expose kids to things that just 20 years ago, or I guess 20 years ago we had the internet, but long time ago weren't as possible. But what you're doing is even beyond that. It's the genuine article, right?
Circling back on itself, really.
It's like the ultimate field trip, really.
It is. And, I think as we went through COVID and the digital learning platform, everyone was really saturated with that. And, we still have tools in our toolbox from that experience, but the need to get out and to be on the trail in nature, doing the experiential piece is even more necessary these days.
I was at an experiential education conference back in April doing this.
Yep.
I was the only one that was doing this. Everybody else was, with not bandoliers. They were like rock climbing stuff and confidence courses and things like that. What's the word I'm looking for? Those lanyards, not the lanyards, but those things that you hook the carabiners. That's it.
And all the rock climbing gear. Yeah, absolutely.
So it was like that. And that is experiential education.
Absolutely.
It's the probably the original kind of, you have to take all these theoretical things that you learn in the classroom and actually apply them. Travel and all the things, it's not as simple as just getting on a bus and somebody's going to take you there. There's probably stuff that builds up to that ahead of time, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of our schools are looking for resources to kind of front load the kids to make the travel, they're more active participants in it. They've studied the Holocaust, and when they go to DC and they go to the Holocaust Museum, they're ready for that. Or a science teacher who has national parks as part of their curriculum on conservation, and even the crossover for federal protection of public lands and how recreational resources are utilized. Teachers ask for that information all the time to help prime their students for the travel experience.
And so it's like a big, almost like a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing, because when I was a kid, a field trip was like maybe the next town over. Yep. That was it, and we'd pay our $5 to for admission where we're going, and went apple picking, and then you came home. That was about it. And now it's getting on a coach bus, and so with our teachers didn't have to prep us very much about apples and apple picking to go to the orchard. I mean, there was some, and there wasn't much debriefing afterwards, like, did you have fun? Good. But with something like this, a bigger trip equals more that you get out of it, but more you have to put into it.
Absolutely.
And so experiential learning, project-based learning, there's all these great interactions. So you were saying before that New Hampshire, specifically the White Mountains, the Lakes region, all the natural wonder of the state is what initially got you interested in this style of thing. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I was young, my parents had a property up on Lake Winnipesaukee, and we took our family vacations up there. It was a small cottage, but it was really all we needed to boat in the summer and ski in the winter and hike year round. And I remember fondly some of my earliest travel memories up in New Hampshire and going up through Franconia Notch and up to Crawford Notch, and as we were talking about a little while ago, seeing along the highway all of the brown attraction signs.
Yeah.
And even to this day, I travel all over the world, and whenever I see those natural sight signs, I get the same excitement as when I was a kid, and that's where it all comes from. When I went on to study in college, I studied geology and geography, and that is directly related to that time spent in the outdoor spaces in New Hampshire.
When my dad, we moved to New Hampshire because he was in the Air Force. We didn't have a choice. We were stationed there, and my dad completed college while in the Air Force, and he took a geology class, I suppose it's geology, and it was perfect because the professor would do exactly what you're describing. Every weekend she would invite, because there's a lot of non-trad students like my dad, we would go on these field trips and go to all these places that we're talking about and just learn about. I mean, you drive literally through these things all the time because they've been, cleared for roadways. You don't realize just the story that tells. Each rock formation and things like that. And those brown signs, they are so plentiful once you get into this area. Once you get into I-93 north of, Concord, it's like more brown signs than you get the green ones.
And I always appreciated, and still in my work today, I appreciate that those signs represented an accessible natural feature that you could easily hop out of the car and you could, regardless of how old your family is or how experienced you were able to connect with that natural space very easily.
So the question I want to utilize for this is how was this made? So did you get to see the Old Man of the Mountain before
Yes.
he fell?
Actually, for me, the great personal story with that. We would always go up and visit when I was much younger, and we would hike up there at Profile Lake, and it was really very special to us as a family to go travel there. And then when I started teaching, it was back in 2001, I started an outdoor club at my school, and we went up and took students up to Campton, New Hampshire, and we would hike up there and go up to visit Old Man of the Mountain. Well, we were on one of our adventure club trips, and we heard on the news that overnight it had fallen. We were there when it happened. So you were there when it... And that day, after my trip left, the kids got on the bus and went home, and I drove over there, and I hiked around the lake to the little talus pile that had fallen, and was just there having my personal moment with it right after it happened. And every time I go up there, in the last couple of years, if I go up there for a conference or to meet a school, I will go back. I'll do that hike.
Yeah.
I love the memorial that's set up there now, and kind of the viewing situation that they set up to recreate what it looks like, and so it's always special to me. And I was there that day.
When they were talking about building that, I guess the best way to the sculpture, I guess, to kind of pieces it together as you stand there. From perspective, for people that never got to see it, you realize this is not as gigantic. When you see depictions like on this postcard or on posters or any other, you picture like a Mount Rushmore.
Yes.
That you'd be able to spot this face from miles away. But when you get that perspective across Profile Lake, you're like, oh, I see.
But as a kid, that was always the favorite. When you were coming up through the notch and coming around the corner, you were always looking back, and you're like, you can't see it, you can't see it. And then you turn that corner, and everything just aligned, and he stuck his face out. And
I think that, and I remember noting this even when I was pretty young, that that's the draw to that region, Franconia Notch. I feel like when, especially mid-19th century and beyond, the tourism started to happen, that they started to really stretch it with other things that looked like stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, and over there is the eagle's nest, and that is the old, that is the young man pondering. I don't know if those are real things, but it seemed like they were really kind of pushing it as far as, but it's almost like they kind of had to, because this would, for especially a visitor, a tourist, maybe take a few minutes of their time to be like, wow, that's really neat. It's amazing. Maybe inspire artwork or a poem or something like that. Fly fishing, there's lots of that in Profile Lake. But other than that, for the railroad riding or later on automobile society, you got to find some other stuff to get them interested in it. And after a while, it wasn't really even, it was a natural formation, of course, but when you saw it up close, it had big iron bars around it to hold it in place.
For 100+ years, concrete through the cracks and all the rebar in there and everything like that. And as far as I've heard and read, that folks were maintaining that annually and patching it to keep it up. And I remember I was teaching a geology class at the time, and after it had happened, and students were like, "Well, now what? What happened?" I was like, "Well, that's what happens. This is erosion. This is." It's
actually pretty amazing it lasted as long as it did.
It is.
I remember when it did fall a couple of years, I mean, people got emotional about it, because it has become, and something I want to talk about in a minute, kind of the de facto symbol of the state. But one of the conversations that came up, and I guess it wouldn't be that outlandish to bring it up, considering all of the supports that they put on it, was, should we recreate this? So instead of the version that we were talking about with the metal arms that piece it together, based on perspective, they said, why not piece it back together, make a stronger, more permanent one? And by and large, people said no, because that wouldn't be authentic. And Granite State, New Hampshire, is an authentic place. It's not. So it's actually, maybe we shouldn't even put all those supports on it anyway, but that was important. What's interesting is, so I have the state flag here, and that flag has been, and the seal that it's on there has been that way since the beginning of the state, really. It shows a ship being made in Portsmouth Harbor. Yep. New Hampshire has one of the smallest coastlines in the entire country. Yep. Yet we have a nautical themed, and I realize that since it's being built, it's evoking the timber from the interior being brought to the, but it has a very coastal, the Old Man on the Mountain has become the more recognizable symbol. It's on the license plate.
On the quarter, on the street signs, on the highway signs.
Exactly.
Everywhere.
So, I mean, what do you make of that? What does that tell you about the state itself, really, as far as it's not just Portsmouth, right? That may have been the origin place of the colony, but is there a statement being made, perhaps, by using something all the way up in Franconia Notch as the new symbol for the state?
It's a fine question. Not being a state resident, I hardly have the authority to make that call, but I do agree with you. And I think as it's become so iconic, and even today, kids that I work with, when I talk to them about being in New England, they'll ask about it. They were born 10 years after it fell, and yet it endures. And that, I think, is a great it's a great message for the Granite State. The traditions, the legends, how the stories endure. There's a lot of values that are linked from the people that I know from the state about kind of that stalwart, stoic, gritty, but tradition rooted. And I think that represents a lot of that. I think it would be a very appropriate change.
The vast majority of the state, and it's a very small state, and it's like 1.6 million people live there. It's tiny. But the vast majority of it do not live in the seacoast area.
No.
Right? So even though the vast majority also don't live up in the lakes and mountains region, at least this symbol brings it much more central, right? It's something that everybody can gravitate towards. And like we said, it's become this profile bank. There's profile, the name profile is everywhere. And to the point where you don't even need the original thing to be there. It's endured throughout. I think about the Daniel Webster quote about it, right? That here we make men, right? That New Hampshire is about that, and that Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote The Great Stone Face, and all about New Hampshire, and it's become, I like that term, stoicism, right? Stoic. It's this sure thing that if New Hampshire's known for nothing else, at least we can say that.
Yeah.
Right. And in some ways, so I'll think about the license plate, which I have one. We have across the top the "Live Free or Die" statement. John Stark, General John Stark, credited, and he did write this. Some people think it's like a "Remember the Alamo" style battle cry, but in fact it was 25th or 20th anniversary memorial for the Battle of Bennington, which he won during the Revolutionary War, and there was a banquet in the remembrance of the battle. He couldn't make it to the banquet; he was getting older, but he wrote a speech to be delivered there, and in it he concludes with "Live free or die. Death is not the worst of all evils." And this was adopted by the state legislature as the official motto in 1946, right after World War II. And that's also the era where we have no income tax, not now, not ever.
That's right.
No sales tax. So it's almost like New Hampshire's character, anchored by this, is pieced together through time and place. For such a small state, it's pretty remarkable. That was made by lots of different places and over lots of different time.
Lots of, speaking from a geology point of view, lots of different slow and fast processes that all had to work together just right to create that icon.
I wonder what I know that I've heard of like indigenous people's relationship with this.
Yes.
I'm curious what the first person to discover it was. What the
Absolutely.
Because it's all perspective. It's like when did they like, oh, that's cool, we could use this. They would have said cool, but we could use this somehow. But it's almost like that was a monumental moment. That's really where modern New Hampshire got its start. Was when that became like up here in the mountains, which are not easily accessible, at least not in that time period. And even now, you have to go slow on the interstate. It's one of the few places like below 55 miles per hour. So I appreciate you talking about this, and
certainly.
I think it can be hard to talk about natural things as primary sources because humans didn't really have a hand in making it, but the interpretation of it and the use of it by humans is a reflection of, in this case, many time periods. So thank you, Greg, for joining us. Before we cut out, how can people learn more about Grand Classroom?
Just visit our website, grandclassroom.com. If teachers are interested in traveling, we have great resources for them on our website. And being the local guy, I'm based here in the Boston area.
Okay.
I work hand in hand with students and teachers all throughout New England. I come to schools and help them prep things, and they can find me on the website as well.
Awesome.
Yep.
That sounds like a great place. Thank you very much.
Popular culture, by definition, connects and unites us, and proves that people of different backgrounds, in fact, have a lot in common with one another. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, at least in part, for that reason. If it connects with you and you'd like to add to it, or any of the podcast episodes, just visit everything-history.com and search for the Everything is a Primary Source project, which can be found in the classroom section of the website. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Be sure to rate and share this podcast wherever you are listening to it now, and follow Everything as a Primary Source on social media, including YouTube and especially Instagram. Thank you for listening to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source.